Salams, this is People's Dispatch, and you're watching the Daily Roundup, our selection of some of the top news stories from around the world. Here are today's headlines. Anti-war demonstrations held in the United States reject US warmongering and militarism. Sudanese political factions reach an agreement on a transitional government. Palestinian prisoners launch a mass hunger strike. And Mexicans rally to commemorate the 85th anniversary of nationalization of the oil industry. First up, thousands of protesters on Saturday participated in anti-war demonstrations in the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. The demonstrations were held on the 20th anniversary of the US invasion of Iraq, which was launched in 2003 by the administration of then-President George W. Bush. The pretext, of course, was that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. The allegation was consistently and vehemently denied by then Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Most of the justifications and reasoning given by the US administration, along with its allies in the UK, then headed by Tony Blair, were later found to be completely falsified and were also thoroughly debunked and disproved. The invasion, the subsequent war, and year-long occupation of Iraq by the US and NATO forces ultimately led to the deaths of millions of Iraqi civilians, the political and economic collapse of a country, a massive spike in extremism and terrorism, not just in Iraq, but throughout West Asia, and the rekindling of the sectarian divisions between Shia and Sunni populations in that country. Saturday's demonstrations in Washington saw the participants carry numerous posters and banners opposing current US militarism and warmongering in the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. They were seen calling for peace in Ukraine and an end to US wars and sanctions unilaterally imposed against other countries, including Syria, Venezuela, Iran, and others. Protesters demanded that the US government divert that money to address the needs of American citizens who have been struggling for years with myriad economic problems and hardships, including, of course, poverty, unemployment, inflation, and others. The protesters called for the US government to cancel massive financial and military aid that it provides to the state of Israel, also directly contributing to its occupation and ongoing colonization and ethnic cleansing in Palestine. Over 200 human rights and anti-war organizations participated in these demonstrations, which included the likes of the Answer Coalition, Code Pink, the People's Forum, Veterans for Peace, Black Alliance for Peace, Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, the Palestinian Youth Movement, DSA International Committee, Leonard Peltier, and Samidun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network. The various political factions in Sudan have agreed to form a new transitional government next month. This is according to the spokesperson for the stakeholders who've signed on to the agreement, Khalid Omar Yusuf. The statement came on the 19th of March. The factions are expected to sign an agreement on the 11th of April, following months of negotiations between the country's ruling military junta and different political entities. Political parties have unanimously been demanding a return to democratic civilian rule in the country since the Sudanese military overthrew the previous transitional government that was formed after the revolution that ousted longtime leader Omar al-Bashir. The military in October 2021 dethroned the fragile transitional government and brought the country back under military rule. The assumption of power in the country saw widespread protests erupt across Sudan, in which thousands of normal, ordinary Sudanese citizens took part consistently. The agreement that has now been signed by the various factions includes clauses for the creation of a committee to draft a new constitution. The committee will reportedly include 9 members from the civilian political parties, 1 from the army, and 1 from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Additionally, Mohammed Abdul Hakam, a leading member of Sudan's Federal Association and the Forces for Freedom and Change Central Council, last week confirmed that various factions have also agreed on the criteria to select the country's next prime minister. He further noted that the criteria for a prime minister adheres to the principles of the December 2018 revolution, when the Sudanese Professionals Association and others first started protests against the authoritarian rule that was in place in the country. However, there has been opposition and doubts raised over the agreement by others, especially the Sudanese Communist Party, which has pointed out that the agreement risks leaving out millions of Sudanese from the entire political process and proves legitimacy for the military junta. The Sudanese Communist Party also said the agreement would enable the military junta to escape justice and accountability for its violent crackdowns, other abuses, and human rights violations that it has perpetrated against protesters since the coup. In the face of relentless brutality by the Israeli occupation, Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails are set to escalate their resistance actions this week with a mass hunger strike that begins on the 22nd of this month. This coincides with the start of the Muslim holy month of Ramzan. On Sunday, Palestinian prisoners released their collective will ahead of their protest. It was titled "The Volcano of Freedom or Martyrdom." The prisoners say they are finding themselves alone in the face of death and oblivion, struggling against the impossible as besieged prisoners until the end, between the jaws of neglect and the fangs of the colonial Ben-Gvir. They have decided to embark on this mass hunger strike. They added that they shall either achieve a red freedom stained with hunger and dignity, or we shall achieve a certain victory over ourselves and the world together. The Palestinian Prisoners Club has stated that Marwan Barghouti, a militant leader and member of the Fatah Central Committee, will be at the forefront of the hunger strike. The strike marks the culmination of an ongoing civil disobedience movement by Palestinian prisoners, which entered its 35th day on the 20th of this month. This has included the organization of sit-ins, the refusal of meals, continued wearing of brown uniforms, and acts of disrupting a routine, including shutting down prison sections and resisting security checks. Palestinian prisoners have also organized night confusion activities, raising the chant of freedom. The civil disobedience and impending hunger strike are a response to several dehumanizing punitive measures imposed by National Security Minister Ben-Gvir since he assumed office in January of this year. The restrictions include prisoners' access to running water, a limit on shower time, shutting down bakeries within prisons to deny inmates access to fresh bread, placing restrictions on exercise time and time outside, more raids and searches, and dramatically increasing the number of people being held in solitary confinement. Prisoner advocacy group Adamir has also reported on the harsh treatment of 29 women in the Israeli Daman prison, including violent raids and bans on family visits. And finally, Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador on Saturday addressed a rally of thousands of supporters as well as normal Mexican citizens to commemorate the 85th anniversary of the decree passed in 1938 by then President Lázaro Cárdenas del Rio in regards to oil exploration and extraction in Mexico. The rally that was held in Zocalo Square in the Mexican capital of Mexico City saw massive participation and support from common public for the policy which effectively stopped the exploitation of Mexican oil resources by foreign companies and nations. Speaking at the rally, the president praised Cardenas for not hesitating to take the step which paved the way for the nationalization of the oil and natural gas industry. He further highlighted several other measures taken by the then president in the lead up to the decree, which included giving land back to peasants and farmers in the country and encouraging them to mobilize and form collective organizations, which in turn exerted more support and influence in favor of the president and his pro-working class policies of the time. Additionally, Obrador, speaking about contemporary issues and developments, especially the meddling and threatening statements coming from the US, affirmed that Mexico is an independent and free nation, not a colony, not a protectorate of the United States. He cautioned that the US politicians should not make threats against Mexico and resolved to uphold the sovereignty and dignity of his nation. On the 18th of March 1938, the then left-wing president Lázaro Cárdenas declared all mineral and oil reserves found within Mexico as the property of the nation. Mexico then embarked on the expropriation of all petroleum resources and facilities, nationalizing foreign oil companies operating in the country. 5 days later, over 200,000 Mexicans demonstrated in the Zocalo of Mexico City in support of Cardenas' action. On the 12th of April that year, tens of thousands of belonging to all classes made donations to pay the debts owed to foreign companies. And finally, on the 7th of June, Cardenas issued a decree creating a state-owned petroleum company, Petróleos Mexicanos or Pemex, which with exclusive rights over exploration, extraction, refining and commercialization of oil in Mexico. On the 20th of June 1938, Pemex began its operations. And with that, we bring to an end this episode of the Daily Roundup. For more such stories, head to our website, peoplesdispatch.org. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.